Today's year. This class is coming to you from our home, and you're going to enjoy some background noise and maybe some interesting appearances, but we're going to use the opportunity to do some learning. I want to begin with wishing a speedy recovery to all those that are battling with the coronavirus, and blessings for health for everyone. You should stay healthy, stay safe, and really do everything you can to ensure that this doesn't spread. Today's discussion class is about the idea of davening, and specifically, how does davening replace korbanos, offerings that existed in the Beis Hamikdash? How do words do any of that? And it's an interesting discussion, and by way of answering this, we'll address a lot of interesting ideas about davening in general, and these days when we don't have a temple in particular, and we'll learn a little bit about the power of tefillah, what davening has. They tell the joke about a fellow who came to the rabbi and he says, I have a real problem. I have to marry off my daughter, and we discussed with the other side, the family of the groom, that I was going to give them 1,000 rubles. And I don't have 1,000 rubles. So the rabbi says, how much do you have? He said, well, I have 500 rubles. 500 rubles, what's the big deal? Give them the 500 rubles, and then you'll tell them that you'll send the other 500. What's the problem? He said, no, that other 500 that I'm going to send, that's the one that I have already. With words, you don't accomplish much. It's all about action. Talk is cheap, right? Put your money where your mouth is. People tend to discount and say, what's the point of words? Just talking. And indeed, what does it really accomplish? And when we talk about davening, about prayer, it's words. What's this idea? We'll start with a Gemara, Talmud, Masechta Brachos. This is the first volume of the Talmud, Daf Chavav, where the Gemara tells us, Omar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said that the idea of tefillah, the idea of praying, of davening, b'makom keneged tmidim tiknun, it was enacted, established to correspond, to represent the korbanos that were brought in the Beis Hamikdash. People would bring offerings, bring sacrifices. Now we don't have that ability to do so. So we have tefillah instead. You can't bring an offering without a Beis Hamikdash. We do want to connect to Hashem. So Chazal, our sages, told us you should daven. And by saying the words of davening, it's as if you are bringing the korban. And the Gemara goes on to discuss that that's why Shachris has to be before midday, because the morning offering was brought, had to be completely consumed, and the korban had to be burnt and so on before midday. So your Shachris, your morning prayer, has to be before midday. And various different details regarding the times of davening also are impacted by the korbanos themselves. Not only that, so communal offerings, which used to be brought in the times of the temple, we now do that by davening. But not just communal offerings, also offerings which are called korban shgogos. These are korbanos if a person made a mistake. You did something wrong unintentionally. You didn't notice, you didn't mean to, you didn't realize it was forbidden, you forgot that it was Shabbos, whatever the example may be, and you did something which is you shouldn't have done. In the times of the Beis Hamikdash, you would go and bring an offering for that mistake. Now, just for a moment, Torah views a mistake as, while it's not punishable, it represents a problem. There's an issue going on here. If we are inadvertently doing something wrong, that means we're prone to it. I didn't mean to. I definitely didn't want to hurt anything or do anything negative. But the fact is that I did something wrong. And by doing something wrong, by mistake, that's an indicator that something within me is not exactly the way it should be. That's how I was able to do that wrong thing. It's similar to a Freudian slip, right? People say, you said it, you didn't mean it. That's not what I said. It was a slip. Somewhere deep down, you feel that way. So if I do a mistake, I do something wrong, it's not punishable. You can't hold me accountable, But if we're really dealing with self-development and we're trying to refine ourselves and grow, the fact that I made a mistake shows that something inside me is not exactly the way it should be. So in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, we had korbanos, we had offerings that we brought for doing mistakes. Today, that we don't have a temple, by saying these tefillos and this davening, it's as if you're bringing those korbanos and it atones for mistakes that you may have done. Okay, the Alter Rebbe brings in Shulchan Aruch that a person should, it's good to say all the sections which we say before davening, before Haidu, we say about the korbanos, right? Eila, Shlamim, Teda, Chatas, all these offerings we talk about, because by saying it, it accomplishes what we said. And this is our original question. What and how do words accomplish that sacrifices were able to do? Okay? When you took an actual korban, an animal, in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, you brought it to Yerushalayim. First of all, it costed money. Then you had to put your hands on it. And you watched how it was slaughtered in a very humane way. And you watched how everything was taken apart and it was offered. And then you ate it, or the Kohanim ate it, or it was completely consumed. But whatever step happened in that korban, it was action that was taking place. Things were happening. The Gemara tells us, the Shulchan Aruch tells us, that a person should try to daven the way he does korbanos. Meaning that you should daven in one place. Don't walk around the whole shul when you daven, wherever your shul is, because by a korban also it was done in one spot. You had a place where the korban was being processed, was being taken care of. Then it moved to the next place. But while it was being processed, it was in its place. And that's what we're doing when we daven as well. We want to do it as similar as korbanos. Now, let's take this even further. If we're going to say that instead of bringing an offering, you could just say the words, and it's as if you brought it, how come we don't apply this to any other mitzvah? Let's say you got to put on tefillin, and you don't have tefillin. Can you say the prayer of tefillin and somehow fulfill the mitzvah? Of course not. You need to eat matzah, and someone is, heaven forbid, in jail somewhere. It's in Russia, in Siberia. They didn't get their matzah. Could they talk about matzah and fulfill the mitzvah? No. It's not their fault. They don't have the matzah, but you're not fulfilling the mitzvah just by talking about it. So how come when it comes to korbanos, we say, you speak about it, it's as if you've brought it. How does that work? And the truth is, this whole question begins because we don't appreciate or recognize what davening really is and what is supposed to happen while we daven. And I hope to explore this a little bit. The Rebbe brings in Ayem Yaim and Chav Gimel Iyar, that the first descent that a person has, meaning the first decline that comes to a person, is when they stop working on their davening. Because when you stop working on your prayer, I don't mean just saying the words, but focusing and thinking about it and trying to connect with the words. When you stop doing that, or the lack of doing that, then everything around you spiritually becomes dry and cold. You don't have that feeling, that emotion that should be associated with doing mitzvahs. Things become routine. Because you're doing this for so long, and before you eat, you make a bracha, so automatically you're doing it now also. But you don't feel that I'm making a bracha. In any mitzvah, you got to put on tefillin. Okay, I do this every day for so many years. I do it now also. So all this stems from a lack of working on our davening. When a person davens, it does something to us. It gives us a certain feeling, a certain excitement, a certain passion, a warmth in it. And we have to really understand how that works and what davening is all about. But before we do that, let me ask another question. Is indeed, and by the way, those that are watching, feel free to comment or put thumbs up. If you don't like what I'm saying, you put thumbs down. Please share this video with those that are on social media, Facebook, YouTube, and so on. If davening is indeed an exchange for korbanos, Is it a full exchange? What I mean is as follows. Mashiach comes today, hopefully. We all go to Yerushalayim. Do I need to make up any korban that I missed? Here's a practical example. A person wakes up in the middle of the night on Friday night, it's Shabbos, and they go to the washroom. And by mistake, they turn on the light. It's not because they wanted to. They understand that you're not allowed to. They would never do it, but they're half asleep, and it's habit, and they just flipped it on. In the times of the Beis HaMikdash, you would have to go to the temple in Yerushalayim and bring a korban to atone for this mistake. Because again, a mistake represents something inside is going on, which is not exactly the way it should be, and that's why you were able to do so. You're not going to be punished for it. It's not your fault, but we do want to improve that and make less mistakes. So Mashiach comes today. And I know that I made some mistakes. Do I need to bring this korban now for those mistakes or not? Now, it sounds like a very surprising question. It's done, and Mashiach wasn't here, and we davened, we said a tefillah instead. Why do I have to bring a korban? But the truth is, the Gemara tells us that Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha, great sage, he was the chavrusa, if you will, of Rabbi Akiva, he said that one time he was learning on Shabbos next to the light of a candle. Now, the story is he was sitting and learning. I'm sure it wasn't a book. It was probably a written scroll on a parchment or paper of some sort. And he wanted to be able to see the writing a little bit better. And what was common in those days, if you're sitting by a lantern or some type of candle, you turn the candle a little bit so you get better light and you could see what you're reading better. It's obviously forbidden on Shabbos because it could, you're not allowed to move the candle, various different issues with it. And by mistake, he did it. He was so absorbed in the learning that he kind of moved the candle over this way. And he said that he took a notepad and he wrote down, when the Beis HaMikdash, when the temple will be rebuilt, I'm going to go and bring a fat korban chatas, which means I'll bring a serious animal as an offering to atone for this mistake. Okay, let's think about it. Shabbos tells us the story. And we find a similar thing in Gemara. The Gemara tells us that if a person eats forbidden fats, I don't mean the diet type, but there are certain fats which are forbidden according to Torah to eat. If a person did eat from those chelev, those things which you're not allowed to eat from, and you can't bring an offering now because there's no Beis HaMikdash, a person should write down the measurement, the amount that he ate. Because when Mashiach comes, the Jewish court may clarify what's the amount that you're liable. If you ate this forbidden food by mistake, what's the amount of food that you have to eat in order to have to be required to bring a korban? And they're going to explain it to us. The Jewish court may clarify it differently. So write down, keep track how much of this forbidden food you ate, so you know how to atone for it, what type of offerings to bring. The Shalah Kadesh brings, and he says that as a directive to everybody, if you make a mistake, write it down, keep a record of it, so that when Mashiach comes, you'll be able to atone for it. Now, it's not brought in Shulchan Aruch, it's not brought in Rambam. We don't do this halachically, practically, day to day. We do not keep a record of any mistakes that we made, so that when Mashiach comes, we'll be able to atone for it. But the concept is that the exchange that we have today, we daven instead of bringing a korban, isn't really complete. There's other opinions. We find stories in the Mishnah and in the Gemara about sages that would keep track of mistakes that they've made because in the future they feel they want to bring a korban. If the words are there, if the words of davening have that ability to do so, so then let's just not worry about it. Do we have that ability or not? Now, the Rebbe had a visit from the Rishon LeZion, the chief rabbi of Israel at the time, Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu. And in the discussion, when he came to visit the Rebbe was talking about this very concept, how prayer, davening, replaces offerings, sacrifices. And the Rebbe said it's a complete replacement, which means when Mashiach will come, you're not going to have to make up for any sacrifices that you may have missed because you're davening now, you're doing these types of things. And this makes our question even stronger. How is it possible that what used to be in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, you brought an offering to the Beis HaMikdash with tremendous procedures. You learn about it. We say in the davening the exceptional attention to detail that existed then to make sure that every single korban was brought properly. And now we take a siddur and we daven, and somehow it takes care of the whole thing. How does it work? So I want to begin with a story that happened to my wife's grandparents, Rabbi Beryl and Chana Gurevich of blessed memory. The story goes back to Russia in 1945, 46, I think it was 46 and 47. After the war ended, there was a treaty, an agreement between Poland and Russia. Because many refugees and many people were running around because of the war, borders were changing, they were fleeing from one place to the next. Many Polish citizens ended up on the Russian side of the border. And being on the Russian side of the border, with the border closed, they really can't get out. So the treaty was that anyone with Polish documents for a X amount of time is able to leave Poland, leave Russia, and go out to Poland. Now, for Hasidim in Russia, this was a tremendous miracle, because what that meant was if you forged papers that you're a Polish citizen, you could escape Russia and you could have religious freedom. You could raise your family in the proper Jewish way, which was close to impossible, very, very difficult and life-threatening in that time in communist Russia. So an underground movement started. Rabbi Futafas was at the helm of this, and they were sitting all day and forging Polish passports. People were changing their names, going under false identities, getting on trains, and making it out of Russia. And many, many Hasidim managed to do so. His grandparents, my wife's grandparents, had the same thing. They had recently gotten married. It was just a few months after their wedding. And they both got papers, or they were supposed to get Polish papers, which will allow them to escape Poland, Russia into Poland. Once they get into Poland, they can go further to France and so on. So they're on the train, and Chana already had her papers, but Rebbe did not have his papers yet. Some chassid was supposed to bring it to him, the forged Polish documents. He was going to go under a new name and so on. Now, these two documents that they each had, they were not married with these documents. This was one Polish woman's name with one set of information. He had a different Polish name with a different set. They officially are not going to know each other. They're not married to each other. They're going to escape the border, the Russian border. Problem was, his papers never came. He was on the train. As they're getting closer to the border, they were supposed to receive it because they were recycling, reusing the same documents. And he didn't get it. And the authorities came onto the train and they started to inspect papers, and a commotion broke out. What should they do now? He doesn't have his papers. She does, but if she says, I'm on fake papers, that's my husband, she'll be taken off the train. Not only that, but there was a whole group of Hasidim who are all under false papers. So if all these, quote, Polish citizens are together, they're trying to get through the border, and a few of them are forged, and one of them says, hey, it's a mistake, I never got my papers, then they're all in trouble. So in a quick decision, she decided not to say anything. And she watched in horror as her husband, her new husband of just a few months, was taken off the train by the authorities, knowing full well that once she crosses that iron curtain, she may never see him again. Literally never see him again. And it was terrible. I mean, he was taken to prison. He was there for quite some time. She ended up going into France, and she comes to France. She's a refugee. She's alone. She can't get married because she's married. She can't get divorced because there's no way to contact him, nor did she want to. And it's a mess. And naturally speaking, according to natural means, there's no way in 1946 or 47 that she'll ever see him again, which means she'll remain alone forever. Never have children, never be able to build a family. Terrible, terrible situation. And she would cry. She actually would say Tehillim all day and say Psalms and daven to Hashem to some type of miracle some word from her husband, nothing. So much so that the other Hasidim that were with her at that time in Paris trying to get settled were telling her, you're wasting your time. This is a false prayer. It's not realistic. You're asking for a miracle. Stop it. Just face reality. Stop crying every day. Stop saying Psalms every day. You can say Psalms, but face reality. You're not going to see him again. And just come to terms with your situation. It's not good for you. In order to make some money, she would go to Paris every day. And she was a cleaning lady or working as a tailor, helping out in some type of task. And every morning she would leave. And of course, her eyes were swollen from crying, and she was having a very, very difficult time. As she's on the bus getting to the train to go to work, there was a chassid. His name was F.R.E.E. Golden. And this chassid came out, saw her, and he said, don't you worry. You'll see your husband. One day your husband's going to come back. I'm sure everything will be okay. And it was so uplifting for her. She felt so good from it that she tried to coordinate her schedule that the next day she should be on the same bus going to Paris the same time as this chassid of F.R.E.E. Golden. And she did. And every single day she did whatever she could to end up in the same train or the same bus with this chassid. Just to hear those words. And he would repeat it every day. Don't worry, Chana. Hashem is going to help. You're going to be reunited with your husband. We'll get out of there. We see miracles. Every day he would say that to her. And it really, it gave her life. It helped her. 2 years went by. Without getting into all the details of where Reb Beryl ended up, he was in a gulag and then forced labor and many miracles that he had regarding Shabbos and so on. But at some point, there was another agreement with the Polish government. They were going to let out, I think, 10 of Polish citizens. And somehow he got onto that list and they let him out. Now, he had no idea where his wife was. And he started to ask. He came to Poland, then he made his way to France and to Lyon in France. And he tried to find out where is the group of Hasidim which left 2 years ago. Does anyone know where this group ended up? And he finds out that they're in Paris. So he calls he had a contact who he could call. The group of Hasidim were staying in a certain, I think it was a hotel turned into an apartment building, temporary living quarters. And he called there to let his wife know that he's, I think, 2 weeks away from coming. The one that got that phone call was F.R.E.E. Golden. And he went to Chana and he said, I just spoke to your husband, information from your husband, that he's in France, safe and alive, and he'll be here in about 2 weeks. It was tremendous, tremendous joy, as you can imagine. They were reunited. Thank God they had many children. And like I said, it's my wife's grandparents. But the idea is like this. They asked F.R.E.E. Golden, how did you know? You kept on telling her, oh, everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. How did you know? He said, I didn't know. Honestly, I had no idea. But I felt that the power of words, of being able to say things will be good, to wish her well, to try to uplift her, has validity. It does something. And the truth is that it does. Words do accomplish something. As we see, he was able, ironically, or not ironically, he was able to be the one to receive that message and to give it over that indeed he's coming. So back to our original question, how do words replace offerings? How do words replace korbanos? So Chazal tell us our lips will replace the animals, which means our speaking does indeed take care of what offerings take care of. And let's understand why. Every morning when you wake up, you eat something, you drink. This food gives you energy for a few hours until it's time for lunch. And then you eat again, and you have more energy, and you're able to continue. That's the way it works physically. Spiritually, there's a similar thing. Our soul is hungry. It's in our bodies. It's not having spiritual experiences per se. But every time that we daven, every time that we pray, yes, saying words, our neshama, our soul is getting nourishment. It connects. It has that that relationship with the divine, which it longs for so much. And when that happens, it causes a transformation within ourselves. We become different people through the process of davening if we do it right. It's not just that we're saying words about korbanos, which happened so long ago, that something was done in the temple. We're doing something to ourselves. We're creating that bridge between the neshama and the source with God during that process of davening. And what happens is the person gets a dose of holiness, and it helps him. Not only that, but our sages tell us the idea that we learned from Yaakov giving to Yosef the city of Shechem, and he says, "I got the city of Shechem becharbi ubekashti, with my sword and my arrow," which means I conquered the city. But the idea is that davening represents an aspect of war, of battle, of conquering. When someone comes to daven, when you try to pray, internally there's all these issues going on. You want to focus, you want to concentrate, you want to daven appropriately, but it's very hard. Because in your mind, many things are going on. And there's a part of you that recognizes the value of davening, and it tries to stop you. It stops you by getting all these other thoughts in your mind, by not letting you concentrate and so on. And we have to battle with that to be able to do so. And it has the same effect as when we bring an offering. What the offering accomplishes, the davening accomplishes. There's a letter from the Rebbe, which he shares about a solution to davening. When a person davens, you start to daven, and if you really focus, you really concentrate, it's very, very hard, and it takes a very long time. And this fellow wrote to the Rebbe that, I start to daven, I want to do it with proper intent, proper focus, and it's taking me forever. It's hours. And I have to go to work. I can't do all this stuff. So the Rebbe told him, you should daven one page at a time. Quoting that the Hasidim used to do this, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't daven the whole davening every day, but focus on one page. So on Sunday, you took the first page of davening, you did that really, really well, you thought about the words that you're saying, you concentrated, you perhaps learned more of the deeper meaning behind the words, and you said it. The next day, do page 2. The first page, you'll just do it regularly, and the next page, you'll do it very, very thoroughly with a lot of intent. And this way, as you go through the Siddur, throughout a very long period of time, maybe months, you'll properly have davened the whole thing the way it's supposed to be. Chassidim tell the story about a chassid a Jew once came to Mezhibush. Mezhibush was the hometown of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Chassidus. And he came in and he looked to be like a very spiritual person, a holy individual. And they wanted to see, the students of the Baal Shem Tov wanted to see, is this guy real or is he fake? And they started to ask him questions and learning, and they saw that he's really knowledgeable, he knows his stuff. But they wanted to know, maybe you could learn a lot and still be rotten inside. Maybe you could have a lot of knowledge and a lot of know-how. When it comes to reality, maybe he's a fake. Baal Shem Tov said, ask him to give you a solution to daven better. Tell him that you have a difficulty in your prayers. It's hard to concentrate. It's hard to pray correctly. If he tell you a way to solve that. If he does, then you know he's fake. Because davening is difficult. As we said, the Zohar tells us the time of davening is a time of battle. It's a war. It's a war with yourself, with your animal soul to try to daven correctly. Winning that battle, when you get through that, even a little bit, even one page at a time, you cause a transformation within yourself. You're feeding your neshama. You're becoming holier. And that accomplishes the very same thing that a korban, a sacrifice, in the Beis HaMikdash, in the temple times, with the kohanim, these great spiritual levels going on there, prophecy all around, miracles for everyone to see, that when you daven, it accomplishes the very same thing. And this is why We daven 3 times a day. And this is why davening replaces korbanos, because it causes us to become different people. It causes us to grow. It causes us to be better. So during this very interesting time, we're all dealing and doing what we can to stop the spread of the coronavirus. We're davening a lot. Unfortunately, the shuls are closed and we're not able to daven the way we would like to, but we're still davening at home. And it's my prayer, my hope, that Hashem should answer all of our tefillahs, all of our prayers, quickly and speedily with the coming of Mashiach. Thanks for watching. Please take a moment and share this video. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Let's spread learning all around. Thank you. See you all soon.